So evolution unifies and illustrates the diversity of life. This tree of life, which we've seen a couple times, demonstrates the evolutionary change and natural selection represent unifying concepts of the biological world. Approximately, there are about 8.7 million species of eukaryota, and about 10 to the 7th to 10 to the 9th, which is about 10 million to 1 billion species of bacteria. And the specific numbers of archaea is still uncertain, but expected to be very, very large. This domain is eukaryotes, eukaryota. This is prokaryota. In the next slide, we'll start talking about the differences between the eukaryote cell, that domain, and the prokaryotic domains. So eukaryotic cells, any organism that is found in this section of this phylogenetic tree, including us right here as animals, have eukaryotic cells, meaning that we have compartmentalized cells. We have specific areas within our cells that perform specific functions. We have enclosed organelles that perform specific functions. Prokaryotic cells have what's more of an open floor plan, where all of the functions are occurring within the cell without compartmentalization of the functions. An example would be a compartmentalized company or building, where you walk in the building and people in one room do certain functions, people in another room do certain functions, and so forth. And when you walk in, you may not be able to see where the CEO works, because he may have an office towards the very back. But with regards to prokaryotic cells, it's an open floor plan. You would walk into the cell, enter the cell, and be able to see where the boss sat and where other people worked within that building, without any walls separating out the specific functions of the business. In that first domain, so this is prokaryotic cells, within that first domain is bacteria, or also they're often called eubacteria, EU bacteria. These are prokaryotes. They're single-celled, typically a few micrometers in length, so about 1 times 10 to the minus 6th in length. They come in a wide range of shapes, ranging from spheres to rods to spirals. One key example is Staphylococcus aureus, which is your culprit if you've ever dealt with a staph infection, or Escherichia coli, that are usually the culprits when we have a recall on spinach, fresh spinach, or fresh lettuce. And this spiral-like bacteria, Treponema pallidum, which tends to be found in raw meats. The second domain is archaea, which are also prokaryotic organisms. They're single-celled, but they differ significantly from bacteria in that these organisms were first described in extreme environments, but have been found in many environments since then. They were first discovered in the hydrothermal vents in Yellowstone where the temperatures can be so hot, up to 135 degrees. And these bacteria were able to live there. They're also able to live in high salt environments. Methane producing cells tend to produce the smell of manure. Comparing and contrasting these two prokaryotic domains, archaea have a cell wall composed of protein, while bacteria have a cell wall composed of peptidoglycan, or a sugar protein complex. They don't tend to respond to antibiotics, and they have the same DNA, RNA, protein, and synthesis machinery as bacteria, but they're more extremophiles, meaning that they are able to live under extreme conditions like the hot weather, hot, humid, hydrothermal vents, and their reproduction pathways are different. Bacteria tend to be more mesophiles, living in intermediate environments. Both of these domains are mapped back to a common ancestor, and they're single-celled prokaryotes. But as you can see, there are certain differences between the two. Eukaryotes are diverse groups of microorganisms, historically called the biological kingdom of Protista. Some are autotrophs, remember, meaning that they undergo photosynthesis to produce their own food. But some are heterotrophs, meaning that they rely on autotrophs to produce nutrients that heterotrophs can then absorb. Some examples of some protists are algae, protozoans, water molds. This specifically right here is a red blood cell with a bacterial organism. Not a bacterial organism, a parasite that is considered a protist, belonging to the protist kingdom of Eukaryota. This third kingdom of the third domain of Eukaryota are the multicellular autotrophs, or plants, photosynthesizers. Some examples of plants are some algae, mosses, ferns, and flowering plants. Another kingdom of the Eukaryota are animals, multicellular heterotrophs, meaning that they must absorb and process food produced by autotrophs. Some examples are sponges, fishes, mammals, insects, birds. The last kingdom of the Eukaryota domain are the fungi, which are multicellular heterotrophs that are decomposers. Some examples are toe fungi, this athlete's foot, which we've all struggled with at some point. Some examples of fungi are molds, mushrooms, yeast, ringworm. So the next time that you treat your foot for athlete's foot and you're trying to kill off that fungus, keep in mind that you're killing off one of your relatives. genus name, species name. This being the top, out of those two ranks, this being the first, the larger category, and then separating into a smaller category with the species. Daniel, genus, species, genus, species, genus, species. If we wanted to, we could put one more model system, which we don't typically use for research, at least most research. Homo sapiens, genus, Homo sapiens, species. The last part of this chapter is talking about some challenges facing science today. One of the challenges is biodiversity, which is an estimation of and classification of the total number and relative abundance of species, their genes, and the ecosystems in which they live. There may be as many as 15 million different species, but less than 2 million have been identified. Thus, one of the other challenges facing science is the death of a species or a larger taxonomic category. We lose hundreds of species per day due to human activities. So losing biodiversity before we've even classified it. So when we talk about a large taxonomic category, we're talking about the kingdoms like the genus, or the class, or the order, or the phylum, or the kingdom. Probably not the kingdom so much as some of the lower ranks, taxonomic ranks, or categories. Emerging diseases that may result from more exposure of humans to animals and insects, and changes in human behavior and use of technology. This being an example of the COVID-19, which is showing the emergence of COVID-19 from cultured cells isolated from a U.S. patient. If you remember, COVID-19 came from exposure of humans to bats. Climate changes. Changes in the normal cycles of the Earth's climate due to an imbalance in the chemical cycling of the element carbon. Global warming is caused by increased amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere that result in a rise in temperatures. So four challenges facing science: biodiversity, extinction, emerging diseases, and climate changes.